is engaged in a whole-of-state effort to become the world's only superpower by any means necessary. Of the nearly 5,000 active FBI counterintelligence cases currently underway across the country, almost half are all related to China. And at this very moment, China is working to compromise American healthcare organizations, pharmaceutical companies, and academic institutions conducting essential COVID-19 research.
Well, those are strong words coming from FBI Director Christopher Wray, saying China is trying to dominate the world. Chinese officials deny this, saying that Wray's comments are full of political lies and the U.S. is breaking international contracts and trying to pursue unilateralism. This poses the question, on a foreign affairs front, how will the next president handle the long-term threat of China? Well, we've got former vice presidential candidate Joe Lieberman here to discuss that. Welcome, Senator.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good to be with you.
All right. Well, so great to have you on the show. Before we get to all of that, I have to ask you about the latest SCOTUS decision regarding President Trump's tax returns. That's the big news of the day here. We just had Alan Dershowitz on. He said this is a huge win, actually, for Trump, but a big loss for future presidents. I got to ask you, Democrats, they wanted the whole 9 yards here, and they didn't really get it. If you're a Democrat, are you deflated by what happened today?
I got to disqualify myself to a certain extent in that I have heard about the decisions, but really I haven't read them. I was interested in the news of the first decision. I think it's an important decision because it really says that a prosecutor, happens to be in New York, has a right to ask for the president's private papers as part of a criminal investigation. So it upholds the fundamental American principle that nobody is above the law. Apparently, in the second decision, which I haven't read much about yet in detail, the Supreme Court said that the House Democrats could not get the documents that they want, president's private text, et cetera. So, yes, I'm sure those Democrats are deflated. But I must say that I'm feeling I'm fascinated by the decision. The one upholding the right of the New York State prosecutor to get the president's private information, I read was a 7-2 decision, again written by Chief Justice Roberts. So I think they were upholding a constitutional principle together across ideological lines, and that's always good for the country. So I don't feel deflated about it. I'm kind of fascinated about it.
Senator Lieberman, David Brody here. Good to see you again, by the way, sir. Great to see you. Look, while we're going to get to China, but while we're on Trump, I want to talk about Joe Biden. You know him well. Look, you're a straight shooter. The far left wants to take Joe Biden to a certain place, and you know Joe Biden. What is your sense about what's going on there? Is this a Joe Biden that you recognize at this point? What's going on in the party?
Well, what's going on is a classic moment in both parties where in the Republican Party, the right contends with the center. And in some ways, that battle has been won by the right. And same is happening in the Democratic Party. It's happened before, happened in the late 60s and early 70s in the Democratic Party. The further left was ascendant and ultimately dominant. And as a result, Democrats didn't win many national elections. President Clinton brought the party back to the center in '92. And, of course, he got elected twice. And we're having this battle now. But I think Joe Biden got the Democratic nomination because enough Democrats, you could say this is good or bad, but wanted so much to defeat President Trump in the fall that they went with the less leftist candidate because they thought he had a better chance. And that's why Biden won those primaries. And, of course, I hope and pray that he sticks to the center because that's where he has the best chance to be our next president.
Well, Senator, I got to ask you about Chris Wray's comments on China. He says that they're our greatest threat long term. You think if Joe Biden does become president, do you think that he will hold them accountable and be tough enough? I know there's question with his son, Hunter Biden, his recent ties with BHR, that firm there. Obviously, he's left them now recently. But do you think he will be able to hold them accountable as they should be?
Yeah, I do overall. And I'll tell you what, I'm basing this on what I see, particularly in Congress. There is a bipartisan majority forming, speaking, acting legislatively that is very clear-eyed about the threat that China represents. I hope this doesn't lead us accidentally into some kind of war with China. But and look, when I was in the Senate, we had a point of view that if we let China into the World Trade Organization, if we traded with them, they'd ultimately democratize and be more like us. That worked in part in the sense that there's a lot of business going back and forth between China and the U.S. And also a lot of goods coming in here, lower price for middle and lower income consumers. But in a lot of other ways, any hopes we have of China becoming more democratic and respecting human rights hasn't worked. And in fact, unfortunately, under President Xi Jinping, the Communist Party has become more powerful and more controlling of its citizens. So this, I wouldn't say they're the number one threat to us. I think Iran is still the number one threat. But China is a big country, a great country, and a long-term threat. And I think either candidate for president is going to deal with it strongly, including Joe Biden.
Senator Lieberman, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you. We're going to have you back and talk about Iran, that big threat, that number one threat, and Israel as well, of course.
Thank you. All the best to both of you.
Thanks again. All right. Well, coming up, we're going to continue our discussion, actually, about the threat China poses to the United States. And later, we're going to call out the hypocrisy of the left when a clear case of an anti-Semitic rant goes unchallenged. Don't go anywhere.